Welcome back to Celestial Scrolls, where ancient Chinese myths and legends come alive through storytelling. Today, we continue our epic journey with Chapter 38 of Journey to the West, the Crossroads of All Paths. In our previous episode, Tang Sanzang and his disciples completed their most emotionally complex mission yet, helping the village of broken connections begin the delicate work of rebuilding trust and community after years of defensive isolation. They learned that healing relationships requires patience with imperfection and faith in gradual growth. This chapter brings our transformed heroes to a mystical convergence point where all paths meet, past and future, mortal and divine, individual and collective. Here they will encounter travelers from every realm they visited and discover that their journey as living scriptures has created ripples that extend far beyond their direct service. It's a moment of profound recognition and choice that will determine the next phase of their eternal westward journey. If you've been following our heroes through their transformation from seekers to teachers, you won't want to miss this pivotal moment of reflection and revelation. Hit subscribe and the notification bell to continue this legendary quest. Now, let's arrive at the Crossroads of All Paths. The road from New Connections Village led through terrain that seemed to shift subtly with each step, as if the very landscape was preparing for something significant. Mountains appeared and faded like mirages, rivers flowed uphill before correcting their course, and the sky above displayed colors that belonged to no earthly sunset. Tang Sanzang felt his staff growing increasingly warm, the 108 characters pulsing with an urgency he hadn't experienced since their transformation in the mountains of celestial resonance. Master, Wukong observed, his enhanced senses detecting unusual energies ahead, the path is converging with others. I can hear the footsteps of many travelers all approaching from different directions. Indeed, as they continued westward, other paths began to emerge from the shifting landscape, some appearing as golden roads that seemed to descend from the heavens, others rising as silver trails from deep valleys, still others materializing as crystal walkways that bridged impossible distances. Each path carried its own travelers, and Tang Sanzang felt a growing sense of anticipation mixed with recognition. "This feels familiar," Sha Wujing murmured, his foundational nature allowing him to sense the deeper patterns at work. "Like a place we've been before, but also like somewhere we've always been heading." Baji, his transformed understanding making him sensitive to the emotional currents in the air, added thoughtfully, "It feels like homecoming, but not to a place, to a purpose." As the various paths converged, the travelers found themselves approaching a vast circular plaza that seemed to exist at the intersection of all possible journeys. The space was neither entirely physical nor completely spiritual, but partook of both natures simultaneously. At its center stood a simple stone pillar, unmarked but somehow significant, radiating the same gentle energy as the starlight crystals they carried. But what truly captured their attention were the other arrivals at this mystical crossroads. From every direction, travelers were approaching, and with growing amazement, Tang Sanzang and his disciples began to recognize familiar faces. From the path leading east came representatives from the Valley of Gentle Starts, including Lin Sorrow, though she now called herself Lin Hope, walking with the measured confidence of someone who had learned to balance caution with openness. Behind her walked farmers and artisans, children and elders, all bearing the quiet dignity of people who had rediscovered the courage to care. From the northern path arrived citizens of the city of balanced achievement, led by Chen Lu and the former chief administrator. Their procession moved with purposeful energy, but energy tempered by consideration for the pace of their companions. They carried banners displaying not individual rankings, but collective accomplishments, community projects completed, problems solved together, joys shared across former competitive barriers. The Southern Path brought delegates from New Connections Village, including little May Finn, now slightly older and walking hand in hand with other children whose laughter had helped heal adult wounds. Her mother and the village coordinator accompanied them, their faces bearing the wisdom that comes from learning to trust carefully but genuinely. But these were not the only arrivals. From paths that seemed to lead from impossible distances came beings the four disciples recognized from earlier phases of their journey, representatives from the plane of 10,000 communities, figures who resembled the water echoes from the ocean of collective memory, even crystalline formations that seemed to have traveled from the mountains of celestial resonance itself. A gathering, Tang Sanzang realized, his understanding expanded by the profound significance of the moment. All those we have served, all those we have learned from, all those whose paths have intersected with ours. As the various groups filled the circular plaza, a sense of expectant silence settled over the assembled multitude. No one seemed to know exactly why they had been drawn to this convergence, but everyone felt the significance of the moment. The silence was broken by a voice that seemed to come from the central pillar itself. Not the commanding tone of divine authority, but the gentle guidance of infinite wisdom. Welcome, travelers all, to the crossroads of all paths. You have been gathered here not by chance, but by the connections you have woven through authentic service and genuine learning. The voice paused, allowing the weight of recognition to settle among the assembled beings. Each path that brought you here represents a choice: to serve rather than be served, to learn rather than merely teach, to connect rather than isolate, to grow rather than remain static. Tang Sanzang stepped forward, feeling the eyes of the entire gathering upon him. "We are honored to be here," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the plaza, "but we do not understand the purpose of this convergence." The voice from the pillar responded with what seemed like gentle amusement. "Understanding is not required for participation in the great work. But since you ask, observe what your choices have created." As the words were spoken, the air above the plaza began to shimmer and images began to form, not memories of past events, but visions of ongoing transformations that rippled outward from each community they had served. They saw the Valley of Gentle Starts hosting other communities that had lost hope, sharing their hard-won wisdom about finding courage to care despite uncertainty. The techniques of gradual healing had spread far beyond the original valley, helping countless other places rediscover the strength to risk disappointment in service of growth. They witnessed the city of balanced achievement developing new forms of cooperation that honored both individual excellence and collective well-being. Their innovations in collaborative competition had influenced dozens of other communities, creating networks of mutual support that strengthened rather than threatened individual accomplishment. They observed New Connections Village sending out mediators and healers who helped other communities navigate the delicate work of rebuilding trust after betrayal. Their methods of balancing connection with healthy boundaries had become templates for relationship healing across vast regions. Our service has created ripples, Wukong observed with wonder, watching the expanding networks of influence spread across the visionary display above them. More than ripples, the voice corrected gently. You have created currents, streams of wisdom that flow between communities, carrying insights and innovations, connecting separated places through shared understanding. The images above continued to unfold, showing how the three communities they had directly served had become sources of healing and guidance for countless others. But more profoundly, the visions revealed how their approach, patient presence, authentic example, gentle questioning, and respect for each community's autonomy had itself become a teaching that spread through the network of connections. This is the nature of living scriptures, the voice explained, not texts to be read, but examples to be lived, not wisdom to be hoarded, but understanding to be shared through action. You have become not just carriers of enlightenment, but catalysts for its spread. Lin Hope stepped forward from among the valley representatives. You taught us that hope and disappointment could coexist, she said to Tang Sanzang and his disciples. But in learning that lesson, we discovered we could teach it to others. Your gift to us became our gift to pass forward. Chen Lu nodded agreement from the city delegation. You showed us that competition and cooperation weren't opposites, but partners. That insight transformed not just our city, but every community we've since worked with. Little Mei Fen, now serving as an unofficial spokesperson for her village, added with the directness of youth, You helped the grown-ups remember how to trust and be careful at the same time. Now they help other grown-ups who forgot the same thing. As these testimonials continued, Tang Sanzang and his disciples began to understand the profound truth being revealed to them. Their transformation from seekers to teachers had been only the first step. Through their service, they had become part of a vast network of mutual learning and support that extended far beyond anything they had imagined. But now you must choose, the voice from the pillar continued, its tone taking on greater weight. Your journey westward can continue along many paths. You can return to any of the communities you have served, deepening your work there. You can venture into realms not yet explored, seeking new forms of wisdom to integrate and share. You can ascend to celestial planes where your understanding can be tested against cosmic truths. Or ... The voice paused, and in that pause, the entire gathering held its breath. You can choose the path of eternal service, becoming permanent bridges between realms, guides for other seekers, and anchors for the network of connection you have helped create. This path leads not to a destination, but to a state of being, forever growing, forever serving, forever learning through the act of teaching. The weight of this choice settled over the four travelers. They had begun their journey seeking the Buddha's scriptures in the Western paradise, believing that enlightenment lay in reaching a specific place and acquiring particular knowledge. Now they understood that they had become the very scriptures they had sought, and their choice would determine how that wisdom would serve the world. Tang Sanzang looked at his three disciples, seeing in their faces the same mixture of recognition and uncertainty he felt in his own heart. They had grown so much since their early adventures, transforming from a collection of individuals seeking personal redemption into a unified force for positive change in the world. "We must discuss this among ourselves," he said to the assembled gathering and the voice from the pillar. "Of course," came the gentle reply. "True choice requires contemplation. The crossroads will wait." As the four travelers withdrew to a quiet section of the plaza, the other groups began their own conversations. Communities shared stories of transformation and growth. Celestial beings offered perspectives on the cosmic significance of their gathering, and individuals reflected on how their own journeys had led them to this moment of convergence. "What do you think, my friends?" Tang Sanzang asked, as they sat in a circle just as they had so many times during their journey. "What does your heart tell you about the path forward?" Wukong spoke first, his words careful and thoughtful. "I have always been a creature of action, Master. The idea of eternal service appeals to the part of me that loves challenges and helping others grow. But I wonder, is there still more for us to learn that we can only discover by continuing our original journey?" Baji nodded thoughtfully. "I've found such satisfaction in our recent service to communities. The joy I've discovered in helping others find balance feels more fulfilling than any pleasure I pursued in my earlier existence. Yet I'm curious about what forms of wisdom we might encounter in realms we haven't yet explored." Sha Wujing's response came slowly, as his responses always did. "For so long, I defined myself through service to specific individuals. First in heaven, then to you, Master. But our recent work has shown me that service can be much broader. The network of connection we've helped create feels like it could become a foundation for tremendous good. Perhaps our highest service would be to tend that network." Tang Sanzang listened to each perspective with the deep attention he had cultivated through their years together. "You each speak wisdom," he reflected, "but I find myself thinking about something the celestial beings told us in the Crystal Mountains, that our destination was not a place but a state of being, and that we had been arriving at it gradually through every step of our journey." He paused, watching the interactions among the various groups scattered throughout the plaza. "Looking at what we've accomplished, at the connections we've helped create, at the wisdom that flows between communities because of our service, I believe we may have already arrived at the Western paradise we sought, not as a location to reach, but as a way of being in the world." Wukong's eyes lit up with understanding. "You mean the scriptures we sought were never meant to be retrieved, but to be written through living? And the Buddha we sought to find was never separate from the Buddha nature we were cultivating within ourselves and helping others discover," Baji added. Sha Wujing smiled with quiet certainty. "Then our choice is not really about changing direction, but about recognizing what we have already become and committing to it fully." Tang Sanzang nodded, feeling the same certainty settle into his own heart. The eternal westward journey, not toward a distant goal, but deeper into the infinite possibilities of conscious service and compassionate connection. When they returned to the center of the plaza and announced their decision to the assembled gathering, the response was immediate and profound. The representatives from their 3 served communities expressed joy that their teachers would remain available as resources and guides. The celestial beings offered blessings for their choice to serve as permanent bridges between realms. The other mystical travelers welcomed them as fellow wanderers on the infinite path of service. But most significantly, the voice from the central pillar spoke with unmistakable approval. You have chosen well. The path of eternal service is the path of endless discovery. Each act of help creates new opportunities for learning. Each community served opens pathways to others in need. Each connection forged strengthens the entire network of understanding. As the voice spoke, the starlight crystals they carried began to merge with their very essence, becoming not objects they possessed, but aspects of their being. The transformation was gentle but profound. They remained themselves while becoming something more, individual consciousnesses that were also part of a vast network of wisdom and service. You are now living bridges between all the realms you have visited and all those you have yet to encounter, the voice continued. Your journey westward becomes an eternal spiral, ever deepening, ever expanding, ever serving the growth of consciousness in all its forms. The gathering began to disperse as representatives returned to their various communities and realms, carrying with them the blessing of this convergence and the knowledge that their teachers would always be available when needed. But the four travelers remained, understanding that their relationship to the physical journey was now fundamentally changed. They would still travel westward, but westward now meant toward ever greater depths of service and understanding. They would still face challenges and adventures, but these would arise from the needs of communities they had yet to encounter and forms of wisdom they had yet to integrate. They would still grow and learn, but their learning would be forever intertwined with their teaching, their growth inseparable from their service to others. As the sun set over the crossroads of all paths, though sunset here seemed to lead not to darkness, but to a different kind of illumination, Tang Sanzang and his disciples prepared to continue their journey. But now they traveled not as seekers approaching their goal, but as fully realized servants of the infinite awakening of all beings. Where shall we go next? Wukong asked, his question carrying both curiosity and confidence. Tang Sanzang smiled, feeling the network of connection stretching out in all directions around them, sensing communities in need and opportunities for service calling from countless realms. Wherever we're needed most, he replied, the path will show itself as we walk it. And with that understanding, they stepped forward into the endless adventure of conscious service, their true journey westward finally begun. And that concludes Chapter 38. Tang Sanzang and his disciples have reached the crossroads of all paths, where they discovered that their service had created vast networks of connection and healing. Faced with the choice of eternal service, they recognized that they had already arrived at the Western paradise they sought, not as a place, but as a way of being in the world, as living bridges between realms. This pivotal chapter reveals that their true journey was never about reaching a destination, but about becoming worthy vessels for infinite service and compassion. If you enjoyed this profound moment of recognition and choice, please hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of their realization that the scriptures they sought were written through living, rather than retrieved as objects? Subscribe and turn on notifications for future episodes as we continue following our transformed heroes in their eternal journey of service and discovery. Here at Celestial Scrolls, we're committed to bringing these timeless tales of spiritual evolution and compassionate service to life, one chapter at a time. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey of transformation from seekers to teachers to eternal servants of wisdom. The adventure continues as our heroes embrace their roles as living scriptures in an infinite spiral of learning and service.